Evil, a word that probably lost most of its meaning throughout the years, due to hack writers managing to get into any space they can muster. But when you can make a character that is truly evil, you succeeded in the realm of villainy. However, what can you use within that character to really bring them from this B-lister villain to a hero that will leave audiences begging for more of his presence? What must you do to make someone who is truly good? That is the question I answer today, and this is the Analysis of Heroism on Gajeel Redfox. My name's Talon Talks. Enjoy. We're going to teach a lesson really early in this episode. Specifically, we're going to talk about how you make a villain known. There are many ways, but what you have to keep in mind is don't go too far, but go far enough to cross a line, especially early in a series, especially one where literally no one dies, and you need to make their introduction unforgettable, but compact enough to where you don't give away too much information on who the character is, and you want the audiences to read what their presence eventually brings. Because if you cannot do that, you are going to ruin your only opportunity to make a first impact on the audience, because introductions are everything. Gajeel's first appearance was mocking Fairy Tail for what they were to him, weak and worthless, but just important enough for him to remind them of their place in reality. And how would he accomplish this? Simple. He would cross a single line to spark a war, and what better way to do this than to mess with the members of Fairy Tail? So his second action was to crucify 3 members of Fairy Tail, Jet, Droy, and Levy. He displayed these 3 in a way to humiliate them and their guild. That much is obvious. However, it was also to let Fairy Tail know who did this, and to get them away from Lucy, so that they'll be able to take her. With Gajeel at the center of everything, being really the only thing towards the end of the arc to display how low a villain Gajeel is, and how much he is willing to do. And we can see this displayed in the first attack, and when that doesn't spark anything, the second strike will. And when that one comes out successful, the final fight commences. And while the third strike wasn't necessarily Gajeel, he did still have a massive role in it. And when they're trying to defend their hall, the fourth strike will happen. And this shows us 4 separate occasions where Gajeel's involved, and 3 of which he is completely responsible for something that has negatively affected Fairy Tail on many different levels, giving us a view on Fairy Tail's patience and haste on what they view as important. And the only way we knew this is because Gajeel is a dick, and they say villains are terrible. For real, maybe they should have just taken out the scene where he crucified 3 members on a tree, just like they did with Ultraman. Bullying authors and writers who hate it when villains get too evil aside, Gajeel can mostly be analyzed, to this point, through the hero of this arc, Natsu Dragneel. Natsu is Gajeel's foil, but he is also being used in a way to display what Gajeel isn't through what Natsu is, a good person. Natsu is simply fighting because his family was hurt. That's his motivator, and it's not because Gajeel's evil or has possibly hurt many others. Natsu is a simple man who just wants to protect his friends. Though that is basic, I do have some respect for Mashima for it.
Yeah! With the power of friendship, we could do anything!
Natsu is given as much light as Gajeel. He is shown to be a hero at nearly every corner. Any chance he is given, either when Lucy needs help or when his guild is about to be destroyed, Natsu is and will be there when everyone needs a hero to save the day. But Gajeel is the demon of the Phantom Lord, slaying all in his path without a single shred of remorse. Jose wants him to tempt Fairy Tail? Gajeel's your guy. Injure their members? Gajeel's got it. Kill without hesitation, Gajeel will arrive. This man is a true villain, something that and I hope many others can easily get behind. Though yes, he is evil, it's that and exactly that makes use of Natsu in this arc, because Natsu's enemy this arc isn't Jose, it's Gajeel. And if you need to find a way to display your hero, you can do it through your villain. This fight is about one thing. It's about Lucy, which is something that I started to notice many years back, within not just Mashima's writing specifically, but within every other piece of media. It's actually an overarching dynamic that is present within nearly every arc you can read, not just in Fairy Tail, but within Dragon Ball, My Hero Academia, Berserk, Batman, really anything you can think about. And it's specifically that the protagonist and the antagonist of the arc always are trying to grasp onto the same thing that leads to entirely different areas, which is the product of an arc. Your villain and hero need some way to meet and fight, and that's exactly what Lucy is being used for. What the characters are trying to obtain is Lucy, and this is where their goals collide. For Natsu, for his family. For Gajeel, for his master. And for both, it is their pride. After the Tower of Heaven arc starts one of my favorite arcs, the Battle of Fairy Tail, and a very important character in this is Gajeel. And the reason we get any of this is to show that Gajeel is still more or less a villain at heart, via him not liking anyone around him. It gives him not just a nice dynamic with Natsu through his first Heroes arc, but it also gives him room to improve as a character as we enter the Battle of Fairy Tail with Loxus Dreyer as the main antagonist. If you want more context, I released a Loxus video prior to this one, so feel free to check it out, as it adds onto much of this video in terms of what I view as one of the only near perfect arcs in Fairy Tail overall, with that one having most of its own original points. Either way, one of the many ways that Mashima uses Gajeel's introduction into Fairy Tail to the benefit of the storytelling is by comparing him to Juvia by using the rest of the guild. Juvia is quickly accepted, no one cares, but Gajeel, they don't just outright shun him, they beat him down with little to no remorse. And why is that? Not only is it to the detriment of Juvia's personality, but it also has to do with exploring a major part of this arc that doesn't necessarily bring out the journey that Gajeel's on, but it builds onto the fact that Gajeel must do something major in order for his sins to be forgiven. But it builds onto a major part of this arc. The difference between the characters is how Gajeel treats those around him compared to Natsu. Gajeel now in Fairy Tail shows a dynamic that is both perfect and underutilized a bit in my opinion, but I can forgive that because the point still gets across. Gajeel's not wanted in the guild, obviously because he destroyed the guild. He hurt everyone by taking away their jobs, money, and homes. But no one is more hurt about this than Loxus Dreyer, who pile drives this kid into the ground. This scene sets up our antagonist for the arc, and what the arc will be about, and what our former villain will be getting up to. And finally, it's setting up that Gajeel isn't joining necessarily just for the money. He's joining because he's lost. He doesn't know what he is supposed to be, and maybe, just maybe, he is supposed to be a hero. But if he's a hero, there's still yet another question. What makes an audience love a hero? Their flaws. Flaws is what makes a character who they are. Now, it's not necessarily the flaws one has, more or less it's about the journey they can come through with their personal flaws. Gajeel's the man with those flaws. He is perfect for the role of the hero's journey, because who else has more flaws in a story than a straight up villain? If you want more details on flaws, they come in two different forms, a psychological flaw and a moral flaw. The former meaning a flaw that affects you, and the latter being a flaw that affects others, with the need making up the journey to answering these flaws. Gajeel's psychological flaw is his regrets for what he had done, which was tackled in the beginning. His pride is too high to apologize, and his pride is too high to actually show any change to those around him. So this is what he comes to, getting beaten down outside of the guild, by the guild's very members. His moral flaw is really from his prior villainy, what he had done to Fairy Tail, as it evidently still carries weight into this arc. This here is the beginning of Gajeel's quest. Though he hasn't realized it, he doesn't need some sort of city-wide fight to grow into a better person, nor does he need a leader who would sacrifice countless for what they want to obtain. What Gajeel needs, and what has already been affecting him, is good people. And this is where Natsu's role in the story plays in. I've talked about this before, but Natsu's role isn't to play a character who will grow into a wiser, better man than any, nor is it to really have any major flaw. Natsu's goal, and what I believe Mashima is using him for, is to change those around him, whether it be in a fight against them or with them. Natsu is the bringer of hope and the reckoner for a new day, and when the flame of your will is diminished, Natsu is always there to reignite it. So if Gajeel's need is good people, then Natsu must be the one, because despite how much the rest of the guild hates this man, Natsu is the only one who is willing to fight alongside him, even though he rejected him initially. Casting off this fight, Gajeel's first statement to Natsu, when he finally meets Loxus, once again, is that they have to team up to beat Loxus Dreyer and save the guild. Remember when I said that the only way to change Gajeel is to have good people around him? Of course you do, I said it 30 seconds ago. This is where that matters most, to save what little Gajeel has left, and to help Natsu save everything he has. This battle is specifically for Gajeel and Loxus to display the difference between someone who can't change and someone who is trying to change. Using this brings the benefit of displaying the hero and the villain and the roles the characters are playing here, with Gajeel finally seeing an example of what he was in the Phantom Lord's arc. a dick. Which, if you remember Natsu, using this brings the benefit of displaying the hero and the villain and the roles the characters are playing here. Which, if you remember Natsu, Natsu is in the dead middle of this argument, because Natsu's point isn't to change himself, it is to change others. And he can only do that to his best if he and the one he's trying to change have a common obstacle. The common obstacle here being the man that Gajeel once was, a power-hungry, disaster-causing maniac that now threatens the lives of everyone around him. So Natsu, someone who's already on the other side of the fence, is helping Gajeel come across, and in this very arc at the same time is trying to convince Loxus the same way. Maybe not intentionally, he is beating the hell out of him, but if what brings them all together is a common goal, then Natsu is trying to keep his guild strong and happy. Gajeel is trying to find a place in this guild, as he had seen what he was once before, and he wants to preserve that guild just like Natsu. And Loxus has seen the weakness displayed by Fairy Tail when they had taken on the Phantom Lore, as he wants this guild to grow strong and preserve it, bringing all three of these characters into yet another triangle of storytelling, much like I had talked about in the Loxus Dreyer video. And finally, to add just one more point onto the difference between Loxus and Gajeel, what is lightning and iron in this arc? Much like I explained in the Loxus video, it serves a major importance in showing who these characters are to each other and what their roles are in the world. Lightning is being used to show that Loxus is someone who views himself as a king or a god, raining his divine judgment upon everyone who dare stand in his way to take this guild from him or make his guild look weak. Basically, what lightning is being used for was to set up his strength, mindset, and development, to show that Loxus is all-powerful, a godlike figure to the heroes, and the fact that he was willing to use that power against them. Fire is used to display that both Loxus and Natsu are in the same boat, with their guild being their top priority. But their ways of going about it are different. But what is iron here? Iron here is a symbol of the human spirit to never give up, much like Natsu, which would normally relate to Natsu, but it's that same will that has been sparked within Gajeel to not stop fighting for this guild. It's that iron sword that came to help Natsu, and it's that iron shield that comes to Natsu's defense in his lowest point in the arc. Gajeel is a character who had been in the villainy, but due to his resilience and human strength to never give in and keep striving due to some people who wouldn't give up on him, he managed to crawl out of the pit of despair and become the very thing that this arc needed: a changed man. My name's Talon Talks. Thank you for watching.